to support live storytelling. We're so excited to host this Gamut Room Mini Mothup.
In the past, Middlebury Mothup hosted these events monthly, but COVID put a stop to that for a really long time. Kristen and I are both really excited to get them started again, and we're really happy that you're all here to support the beginning of that.
Woo! Our theme tonight is Jump In. Emma and I are both new to being presidents of Moth. We also have many new producers on our board, and this is the first event they've worked on.
This is a major transition for the Mothup as an organization, and so it feels like our theme is jumping in, and it feels like we're jumping in tonight with this event. We're so happy for you on this journey.
All the stories you hear tonight are true stories based around our theme. With that being said, let's jump in right into our first storyteller.
Natalie Penna is a sophomore from Albany, New York, majoring in creative writing. They're a huge fan of abandoned buildings, houseplants, and terrible movies. Let's all welcome Natalie.
Two Septembers ago, I found myself at the edge of a cliff, and all I could think was, this is kind of stupid. To me with one of his revolutionary theories, and he called this theory the age of stupidity. And the way that this theory goes is that between the ages of 17 and 23, you'll make the most regrettable, rambunctious, idiotic decisions you'll ever make in your entire life. And that's all I could think about as I was at the edge of this cliff overlooking the water at Dogteam Falls. I climbed up there because I thought it would be fun. You know, the climb's not that steep, but it's a little bit challenging. You end up somewhere with a relatively cool view, like, I don't know, a cooler view that I could have found in my first week at Middlebury. But I didn't really think about how I would be getting down from there. Because you guys are all in Vermont. We're all in Vermont right now. So even when it's 70 degrees and the sun is shining and it looks like a perfect day for swimming, it's fall. The water's gonna be freezing, and I hate the cold. Like, I don't know why I'm here. The cold's my least favorite thing. So the last thing I wanted to do in this moment was to take the plunge down into this water. But I couldn't exactly climb down either, because I would still end up falling in probably, just in a much less controlled, much more dangerous way. So after a couple minutes of standing around doing trying to mentally steel myself up there, I finally hopped right in, and I didn't even register that I was falling. The only thing I registered was the feeling of hitting the water and the senselessness that comes after that, you know. You can't open your eyes in those first few seconds. The only sound you can hear is like the blah, 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 blah of your own breathing as the air comes up around you. And you can't feel anything in your limbs because you're floating, but also you're too numb to feel anything anyways. So I stayed in that state for what felt like much longer than it probably was. And then I resurfaced to see all of my friends standing at the very edge of the shore. And when my head popped up over the water, they said, "Are you okay? Do you need help? Can you swim back? Is your head okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. So many other people just made that same joke. Like 5 other people jumped off of it today. I'm good. I'm not a little baby. I can handle this." I get back to the shore, dry off. I'm shivering under the towel. And one of my friends holds her phone up to me and shows me this video. And after 2 minutes of, standing around at the cliffside, thinking about whether or not I really wanted to jump in, I head towards the water. But I didn't jump off like I thought I did. It turns out I just stepped off this cliff. I was like, okay. And free fell all the way down, nearly hitting my head on a rock and probably splitting it open. I didn't know how to take this, and I was freezing cold. I also wanted to end the day on a high note. So I decided that it was time to go back to campus. We went back, and in typical first week of college night, I called my mom. I said, "Hey Mom, guess what? I'm still making friends. I'm hanging out, I'm having a good time, and I almost cracked my head open on this rock today. I keep talking to her, and she's just silent. She's dead silent. And at the end of my little spiel, my little speech, she goes, "Please don't ever tell me anything like that ever again." And I was like, okay. She didn't actively discourage me from doing it because she knew her discouragement would not stop me. One of my mom's favorite stories to tell about me, I don't even remember. It takes place when I'm a really little kid. Apparently when I was 3 or 4, I'd run up to random strangers all the time and say, "Hi, I'm Nats. Let's play." And no fear, no apprehension, none of that 3-year-old shyness that some of my siblings had. Just complete unbridled, I want to do this and I'm willing to do this, so it has to happen right now. And I think that's carried through most of my life with me. And it's not always stupid. Often it's just a willingness to do anything. But it has been stupid many, many times. And I was really thinking that again as I stood atop a mountain 6 months after the initial jumping incident. It was March, winter, Vermont. What am I going to do except ski? Like, what else is there to do? I will be the first to admit, though, that I'm not a skier. I was not raised a skier. I don't think my parents know how to ski. I never went on like a family ski trip or anything. But what I did do was I did ski club between 6th and 8th grade. So I was kind of an expert on the topic. I just had to get back into it. So I caught myself going down these mountains. I was also like really ill prepared. I was wearing jeans and a little windbreaker instead of a winter coat because I didn't own a real winter coat, and a helmet that I borrowed from one of my friends earlier in the day once they were done skiing. So I'm going down these hills and I'm like, you know what? Let me take this up a level. There's this blue square I see, and it's named after my dining hall. It has a bridge. There is no better place for me right now. So I get around this hill. It's beautiful. I'm just taking it in, like the alpine trees, the really nice like overlook at the top, and all the beautiful, beautiful snow. And then at the bottom, I see a jump off to the right. And I said, I can't get over there right now, but I'm coming for you. You are mine. You are my jump. So I decided to go up again and give it another shot. But this time I made a few mistakes. My first mistake is that I was really intent on going down this hill as fast as I could. No brakes, no slowing down, no stopping, none of that. My second mistake was abandoning my friends. One of my friends stopped to like tie his snowboard. I don't really know what snowboarders do, but like, so he took a second, and I said, I don't have time to wait for you. Goodbye. And I continued down the hill. Then, my third mistake, which I didn't actually realize was a mistake until I went back and all the snow at the snow bowl was melted. It turns out that the jump I went off of wasn't actually a jump. It was a giant rock covered in snow. And the ground all beneath this rock was lots of smaller rocks covered in snow. But I didn't know this at the time. And once again, I didn't register that I was falling. All I registered was the cold when I hit the ground and the feeling of what just happened as I looked around and saw that my skis were 10 feet behind me. Then some guy skis up behind me and he's like, "Do you need help? Are you okay? Do you need ski patrol?" And I said, "No, I'm fine. I just hit my face. I'm fine. And a couple minutes later, I realized it was because I had blood streaming down my face. And my nose is bent at an angle that it definitely should not have been, and my lips were swollen to like 3 times their normal size. But I didn't know that was happening, so I thought he was just being nice. So if you're out there, if you're listening, I'm thank you. I'm very sorry. Upon touching my face and being like, this doesn't feel right, I took myself to ski patrol, and they said, "Your nose isn't broken. Congrats. You might have a mild concussion. Keep an eye on it." And I said, "Mild, schmild, I don't have a concussion." So, once again, trying to end on a high note, I went back to campus. And I decided, you know what, it would be a perfect time to tell this story to the friend I borrowed the helmet from. So I go up to the room, hand them the helmet, and start rattling off my tail, and they stop me and say, Natalie, that wasn't English. Those weren't words that you just said. Like, that was not a coherent sentence at all. Go to a doctor. And I look at them, and they look at me, and I look at them, and they look at me, and we look at the helmet, and it has just these pock marks, like these dents all over it. Like, I must have landed on my head and bounced a couple times. No way that a helmet should look like that if you just hit it in one place. And I'm like, okay, mid-telehealth it is. I call mid-telehealth, and believe me, there's nothing like seeing a doctor who can't see you. It's a life-changing experience. And the guy on the other end of the line was like, yeah, it sounds like you have a concussion. That's probably something that's happening. Just wear sunglasses. Take it easy. You'll be fine. I was like, yeah, sunglasses, perfect. I can handle this. So I wear my sunglasses to the dining hall. I wear them in my residence hall. I wear them everywhere in every social interaction. Get a lot of weird little stares, probably. Then, one day, I go to the dining hall, the same one that Hill was named after. And I'm like, this is fine. I've gone here for like 9 meals. I'll be good. And I sit down, and it's just all, I start freaking out. The lights are too bright, the sounds are too loud, it smells too much like a dining hall, and there are people everywhere. And I say, no, I'm going to the hospital. Right now. Right now. So one of my friends drives me to the hospital. And I wait inside there for 5 hours alone because of COVID. Classic. And then, and 5 hours later, after some fun little brain scans, the doctor knocks on the door and he comes in and says, surprise, you have a severe concussion. I was like, great, perfect. It's just what I wanted to hear. But I was like, what does that mean for me? And so what that means is, you can't look at a screen. You gotta drop your classes. You gotta do bad in the classes that you don't drop. And you're not allowed to mentally stimulate your brain. Like I said, no screens, no reading, no thinking. You can't even stay alone in your single because you have to be like monitored overnight to make sure you don't like just slip into a coma, I guess. So pretty much all I could do was sit in my friend's room and wait for them to come back from class and look out the window and have them bring me food. Like I was some like elderly cat. It was awful. And it was awful. Like that mode of life was way different from what I was used to. But the worst part of all of it was the brain fog. If any of you haven't experienced brain fog, first of all, I'm envious of you. And second of all, let me just like paint a picture. So you're in the woods, right? You're in the forest, and it's nighttime, and there's no moon, but it's snowing. The pretty kind of snow, yeah, like it's thick and it's coming down. It's really coming down. It would be good packing snow probably. And it's all over the ground, so it's like casting that weird snowy glow everywhere. You know, that the snow casts at night. It's super bright and eerie and makes everything look like it's from a horror movie. And in the background, you can see things moving in the trees. Like you can see just little glimpses of them. And you want to know where they're going, where they came from, and what they mean. So you try to follow them, you try to pursue them, try to grab onto them as often as you can. But they get away from you almost every single time. And even when you do catch one, by the time you finally grab a hold of it and like really secure it so it doesn't slip away, you don't even remember why you were chasing it in the first place. Those are my thoughts. And it's really difficult to have a conversation with a friend, and especially with someone new, or like a professor or something, where halfway through I have to say, hi, I'm really sorry, but I have no idea what we were just talking about. Can you like rewind 30 seconds and give me a refresher? It was funny the first couple times, and then it was just tedious. So naturally I was a little bit disheartened, and again in typical college student fashion, I texted my parents. I said, Mom, Dad, I have a concussion. And my mom said, that is not ha-ha. So I hop on a little conference call with my mom and my dad. And my mom, in her typical loving and doting manner, is just saying, do you have like a support system where you are? Are the hospitals in Vermont good enough to handle this? Can you handle doing your classes? Do you need to come home? Do you want us to come up? And I was like, Mom, I'm okay. I just needed to talk to somebody. And she says, okay, I understand, but you have to be more careful and put your safety at the forefront next time. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. I should do that. And with that, she tells me that she has to go pick up my siblings from school, that she loves me very much, and she hangs up the phone. And my dad stays on the line, which is weird, because normally he's the first one to go. But my dad's on the line, and he says, look, Natalie, what Mom told you about keeping yourself safe, especially physically, is really important. And here's some additional context. My dad's he's a former football player and former BMX rider. So he goes, there will always be jumps that you have to go off in life, and although you need to take better care of yourself, you also need to keep going off of those jumps. And I don't know if he meant it again in a football BMX way or in my dad's high school English teacher and this is a metaphor type of way. But what he said rings very true, and I see myself going off of jumps for as long as I can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natalie, for getting us started. Our next storyteller is Ben Wagner, a first year majoring in something climate related. When he's home in New Hampshire, he likes to play outside with his dog. Please help me in welcoming Ben.
Hey, Ben. Hi, I'm Ben Wagner. In second grade, I ran away from school. I've told this story many times. In the locker room with teammates, I say, haha, yeah, I was such a badass little kid. To my friends, I say, remember elementary school? That was wild. To first dates, I say, I was such a cute and shy little kid, and now look how amazing I am. To interviewers, I say, and then I learned how to make more rational decisions. And to the campers I counsel, I say, running away doesn't actually solve any issues. None of these versions of that story are any more true than any others. I'm up here telling you all a story which may imply that I'm a confident human being. The jury is still out on that one, but I certainly wasn't as a 7-year-old. As a second grader, I was 4'7", and I wore a men's size 9 for shoes. I was a tall, gawky, awkward-looking kid, and I felt like it too. While I played sports, I was cognizant of the fact that I had teammates rather than true friends. Elementary school was really hard. At the elementary school in Hanover, New Hampshire, the final second grade reading-writing unit is all about biographies, reading amazing stories about the amazing things amazing people had done. The accomplishments, the adventures, the relationships, the stories, the exploits. I had no such tales of my own, and I was really worried. When I became a star forward in the NHL, what the hell were people going to write about? That I really liked ketchup? That I kicked rocks and long jumped on the playground because no one would play with me? At the time, my two older sisters, Sarah and Kate, were already incredibly accomplished people in my eyes. Winning New Hampshire State Youth Sports Championships, the true pinnacle of human achievement. I felt I would never achieve such great feats. And to be honest, it developed into a bit of an inferiority complex, which hasn't totally gone away. But the joke is on you, Kate. I follow you here to Middlebury. Growing up behind two tough, hard-ass older sisters was really hard. I always struggled to attract the attention of my parents. I rode in the third row of our minivan, buried behind hockey bags and backpacks. I did, however, have one special moment of connection with my dad. In the spring, he would ride his bike the 5 miles into work at Dartmouth College. By the spring of second grade, I was finally strong enough and fast enough to join him. And I will always remember the thrill of those first few weeks out on New Hampshire Route 10 with him. The cars whizzing past, but I felt really safe, kind of tucked in behind his back wheel, drafting off of him. I may not have had many friends of my own, but I was my dad's riding buddy, and that was enough. I always remember he would continue straight on Route 10 as I would take a left to pull into the elementary school parking lot. And I always remember really wanting to stay on my bike with my dad and kind of not go into elementary school, which was this really hard space for me. On that particular day, I rode in and I kind of tucked my bike into the bike rack. But that day, because I knew I was running away from school, instead of taking my helmet inside to protect it from the rain like I normally would, I left it on the handlebars. I didn't want to get caught before I ever had the chance to run away. So I walked in and I endured the normal, boring lessons about grammar and mathematics and spelling. People always made a lot of fun of my poor spelling, but I kind of suffered through, and people made fun of the fact that I ate so much ketchup with lunch. But hey guys, ketchup is good. Why are you guys being so mean to me? My assistant teacher that year, Mrs. Rattel, also kind of sucked. She kind of sucked, and she liked the New York Rangers. Now, I have no idea why I remember that last fact, but memories of mistreatment tend to stick pretty strong in my mind. Now, in all fairness to Miss Rattel, I probably shouldn't be bashing her on a stage like this. She was a 60-year-old woman whose entire job was to wrangle 22 obnoxious 7-year-olds. And really, no one can blame her for being a little bit strict or having a bad day every now and again. But at the time, I was pretty sure she hated me, thought I was stupid, and didn't belong there. So at 11:50, as everyone else flowed right to enter the playground, I turned to the left, and I hopped on my sister's hand-me-down rusted green bike, and I kind of clipped my helmet in, I checked to make sure I had a water bottle, and already I was a little surprised that no one had noticed I was gone. I mean, I knew I didn't have many friends, but I thought surely someone would notice I wasn't there. But I was still really excited about the adventure, so I started pedaling fast, and I kind of ducked behind the parked cars so no one would see me and I wouldn't get caught. And this is the moment in the movie where Pink Panther music starts playing, and you just know shit is about to go down. Except it kind of doesn't. I navigate the first 2 stop signs easily, and I pull onto New Hampshire Route 10, but suddenly it's a completely different road from kind of the mellow 2-lane town road I knew from riding with my dad. Instead, it was this massive interstate, and SUVs were towering over me, and cars were rushing past. And I felt really scared, but I also felt really excited because finally I had a story for my biography, and that was really exciting. So I made my way along the road, and I found myself in front of the Parkhurst Administration Building where my dad worked. And it's kind of these big, steep stone steps to a large oaken door. And I threw my bike over my shoulder, and I took 2 steps, big effort, 4 steps, 2 steps. And I pulled open the oaken door, and I kind of walked into this massive marble foyer, and I started to cry. Real tears, ugly tears. Instead of a rapscallion little 7-year-old off on an escape, I was a 2nd grader in town in the middle of a Thursday, knowing that no one knew where I was and being pretty sure no one cared. There was no one in the building that I could tell, and my tears echoed through the empty marble hallways. I wasn't even sure that I knew where my dad's office was. And I kind of took a guess, and I walked up a staircase into this big room, and I saw this executive assistant, and I was like, hi, where's my dad? And let's all take a moment for Jen Hamilton right now. This is a crazy situation I put her in. She's just been at her desk working on scheduling some meetings, arranging some administrative travel, knowing that her boss is upstairs in the meeting preparing for a board meeting, when in comes this sweaty, grimy, dirty little 7-year-old just kind of dripping mud onto the immaculate lime green carpet. And she's kind of like, this is Mike's problem. So she goes, hey Ben, we weren't expecting you. Do you want to go take a seat in your dad's office? I'm pretty sure there's some whiteboard markers you can play with. So I walk in, but instead of playing with the whiteboard markers, I look around at the pictures my dad has in his office. And instantly I begin to feel more loved. It's mostly pictures of my family at national parks, but there's this one photo that stands out. And my dad has always coached me growing up playing hockey, and there's this one picture of my dad and I, our arms around each other, smiling after a big win. And in that moment, I know that even though my dad and Coach Mike are the same person, they both love me, and that's kind of enough in that moment. And my dad walks in a few minutes later, and he handles it like a champ. He actually seems a little impressed, which makes me feel good. He's like, "You made it all the way into my office?" I'm like, yeah, I did. He's like, "You must be thirsty. Here's some water." And like, "You must be hungry too. I have some Ritz crackers in my desk." So I pull out the Ritz crackers, and I'm munching away, and crumbs are just kind of cascading onto spreadsheets as I explain to him how I got to his office. And he's just kind of like, "Okay, like, that's a conversation we can have another time, but I should really let the school know that you're here. It's been almost an hour since you've left." And he calls them up and he goes, "Hello, I have my son Ben here." And the receptionist goes like, "Okay." And my dad says, "He's supposed to be at school." And the receptionist says, "Our attendance policy is really that you call in that your son will be absent as soon as possible. Like, this should have been in hours ago." And my dad explains the situation, and I can only assume that the reaction on the other end of the line was, "Oh shit." My dad and I get in his old Subaru, and as we're driving back, I feel happy to be with my dad, but really what's going through my head is, I bet not even Tom Brady has a story as cool as this in his biography. But we get into this meeting, it's me, my dad, the principal, and my teacher. My principal and my teacher don't really seem to care that much. They're kind of just on damage control, and they're like, "Okay, so like you didn't get hit by a car, like that's good." They like, don't really seem to care about me, but my dad really cares about me, and that's kind of enough, and it makes me feel good enough. I wave goodbye to him. He gets in his car, calling my mom, "Laura, everything is fine, but..." I go back to class, and I finish out the day, and I finish out the year. I'm 18 years old now, and biking is still an escape. I rode throughout the pandemic, escaping onto long gravel roads to get away from my ego-ridden household. I still ride with my dad, but now I'm faster than him, and he tucks in behind my back wheel and drafts off of me, and I like to think that he feels a little bit safer on Route 10 knowing that I'm out there in front of him. And when Middlebury gets to be too much, as we all know it does sometimes, I walk down to the AC, I hop on a stationary bike, and I call my old man. Thank you.
Yeah, man!
Our final storyteller of the evening is Grace Sockolo. Is majoring in ultimate frisbee with minors in geography and computer science. She's from Brookline, Massachusetts, and uses she/her pronouns. Her ideal day would involve some combination of good friends, good food, and time at the beach. Let's all welcome Grace onto the stage.
I'm 6 years old, and I'm sitting at my grandma's round glass kitchen table with a tan and brown floral vinyl tablecloth spread over it. And I have one leg sort of propped up on my chair, and I'm leaning over the table looking at a tile that feels smooth and cool in my sweaty little kid hands. And the tile is about an inch tall and half an inch wide and a quarter of an inch deep. And on its surface is a navy blue rectangle with these stylized edges etched into it. And my grandma's trying to tell me that this tile is called a soap and has some special properties in the game of Mahjong. But I can't really be bothered to do anything more than play with all the fun tiles in front of me. Fast forward 12 years and I'm sitting at the same round glass kitchen table with the same tan and brown floral tablecloth spread over it, and there's a set of mahjong tiles out. And this time I really am trying to learn the rules of the game. It's June of 2020, and the last time I saw my grandma before this trip was September of 2019, when my family got together for Rosh Hashanah. And aside from the big Jewish holidays, Rosh Hashanah and Passover, when like my whole family would get together, my family would try to go down to my grandma's house in Jersey, maybe one or two other times in the year to spend time with just her. But of course, that spring it was COVID, so we didn't all get together for Passover, and we didn't go down to see her for Mother's Day, and my mom really wanted to go. And I did too, but remember, this is like 3 months into the pandemic. We're still wearing masks made of t-shirts that we've like cut up and like taped onto our faces. It's the early days. And I was terrified. I was utterly convinced that if we didn't do the most strict, like 14-day quarantine, lock yourself in the house, no groceries, no walks, like nothing, that we would regret this trip. But my mom really wanted to go, and my grandma really wanted us to come, and so I was overruled. And usually on our trips to see my grandma, we try to think of fun things to do to get out of the house. We'd go to the movies and the bookstore, we'd go out for pizza or ice cream, but during COVID we couldn't do any of these things. So my mom had this idea that we could ask my grandma to teach us how to play mahjong. And if you're not familiar with it, mahjong is a Chinese tile-based game, and the tiles are sort of like cards in that they have numbers and suits on them. And the object of the game is to transform your hand so that it meets a certain pattern. Maybe you have one number in one suit, and the same number in another suit, and in another suit, and 2 flowers. Something like that. And this game was really popular among Jewish women in the mid-1900s, but of course it's not a Jewish game. It was appropriated by Americans from China. It was appropriated from Chinese culture by Americans in the 1920s, and then it sort of fell out of fashion, and then made a resurgence in Jewish communities in the 1940s when some women got together and said, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we all played with the same set of rules? And so then they started playing with friends from different communities, and that's how it solidified as this game that Jewish women played. And my grandma was a Jewish woman. She lived in New York in the mid-1900s, so yeah, she played mahjong. And my mom likes to tell this story that my grandma was out playing mahjong with the women in the neighborhood, and my grandpa was out with the men in the neighborhood playing poker, and there was a power outage. And immediately, all the women stand up from their game and rush home to make sure that the kids are okay. Now the men also immediately get up from the table, go look for some candles, and come back and finish their game. And aside from these games that my grandparents would make time for when my mom was a kid, they really didn't have time to get together as a family and play games. My mom is one of 5 kids, and there were always people coming and going, relatives, friends, people going to work, people going to school. So my mom, as a kid, never learned how to play mahjong. And in all the time between then and now, there were always other people to see, other things to do, and so she never learned. But of course now it was COVID, and there was no one else to see, and nothing else to do, so it was the perfect time to learn how to play mahjong. And that's what we did on this trip. My grandma taught us very patiently, we were very slow learners, this game of mahjong. And it would take her, when she played with her friends, they'd play maybe 4 or 5 hands in an hour or 2. And it took us 90 minutes to play our first game. And whenever one of us was taking especially long to figure out what on earth we were going to do with our turn, she would say, now I don't mind, take your time, But if you were in my game, the girls would kill you. I love it. They'd kill you. And during, all these pauses, and believe me, there were many long pauses, my grandma would give us tips and tidbits and stories from her life and all her mahjong games. And once you start to get the hang of it, it really is an addicting game. And so we played just hand after hand all weekend and had so much fun. And on the night before we were supposed to go home, my grandma calls me over. She says, "Come here, Bubala. I have something for you." So I follow her throughout her house into the guest bedroom, where she pulls open the wooden sliding doors to the most organized closet you will ever see. And she points up to the top and says, "Get down those blankets." So I go and I get down the blankets. She doesn't want us to be cold. And she rummages around for a minute and pulls out this ivory-colored fake alligator skin briefcase with tarnished brass hinges and clasps and a white plastic handle that's been duct taped quite a few times so that it still, carries things. And she puts it out on the bed and pops open the clasps to reveal a beautiful, well-loved set of mahjong tiles. And she turns to me and says, "This is for you." Now, my grandma always liked to send me and my brother home with a little something from the house. Like she'd sneak us a few candies from the table, from the bowls on the table when my mom wasn't looking, or she'd buy us a book at the bookstore, or we'd be cleaning out her closet and one of us would find some knick-knack or a vase and she'd say, "What, you like? Take it, take it." But this was another level. I was really excited to keep playing this game because it is really fun. But to be able to play a game that only my grandma could have taught me with one of her old sets was just so special. That was the last time I ever saw her. A few months later, she took a fall in a parking lot and went to the hospital and passed away a few days later. That was my first week at Middlebury. And honestly, I wasn't sure how to feel. I was devastated by this loss, obviously, but I was also trying to make friends and go to my classes and figure out how to get into the dining hall. And I wanted to go home for the memorial, but I had just quarantined for 2 weeks to get here, and I would have to quarantine for 2 more weeks to get back, and it just wasn't possible. But I knew that if I had been home, it would have been a very different September for me. And so that made me feel a little disconnected from my family at times. But what made me feel connected to them was that in the time between that weekend when we learned how to play and the time when my grandma passed away, we played mahjong almost every night. My mom is not someone who ever let me or my brother leave our stuff strewn about the house. But once we came home from that weekend in Jersey and unpacked the mahjong set, it did not go away all summer. And while we were playing, we'd call my grandma and say, how's the passing of tiles at the beginning of the game work again? Or who has first dibs on jokers? How does that work? And then as we started to get the hang of it, we'd call and say, "Oh, Grace won today with a really great hand." Or, "We played 3 times and no one won at all." And she'd say, "Okay, all right, that's good." And, I could just feel her beaming on the other side of the phone. I know she loved when we called, and it made her so happy to know that we were enjoying this gift that she had given us. And since that time, every time we get together, my family still breaks out the mahjong set and plays a few hands. And every time we play, I can't help but want to pick up the phone and call my grandma and say, Grandma, I won today with a really great hand. But what I'm really saying is, I'm having so much fun at college. Or, Grandma, we played 3 times today and no one won at all. But what I'm really saying is, I miss you. And I'm sick of this pandemic already. And, even though I can't pick up the phone and make that call, when the thought comes into my head, I can still see her smile, and I can hear her laugh, and for just a moment, I feel like I'm back at her round glass kitchen table with a tan and brown floral tablecloth spread over it, playing a hand of mahjong. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace, and all our other storytellers. That is all for our first Mothup event.
We want to thank you all for coming, but we want to thank all of our producers, Lily, Ewan, Bex, Joseph, Eric, and Keziah. You guys all did such a good job. Ryan, for live streaming our events. Thank you guys. If you're interested in coming to any more events, follow Mothup on Instagram. And if you're interested in ever telling a story, I will be up here after the event, and I would love to talk to you about that and get your name or your email. Thank you all.
Woo!